Hello YouTube! Today's an exciting day. I have brought you all into my office and I've got something new and exciting to show you. And before I unveil my secret, I want to give you guys a little bit of background so that this makes sense. So in my home, I primarily play my games in the living room, and right now we're up in my office. And in my office is the gaming PC that does all the heavy lifting for my streaming. So this is my expensive gaming computer. And in the downstairs area, I've just got a Surface Pro docked to my TV that I game through down there. And I do most of my gaming downstairs just because, with a family, it's hard to come upstairs and lock myself in my office for any length of time because the family needs me around. And so I really need to be able to game in an environment where people are nearby so that I can step away and help or answer a question or any number of things. So the problem that I've been trying to overcome is that with Parsec, if I start streaming downstairs to my Surface Pro 2, Parsec streams the entire desktop of the computer that's up here. And that's kind of hard to manage when I'm sitting on my couch. So without having a keyboard and a mouse in front of me, it's kind of hard to get things going and set things up and work out little details. So it means that you either need to get some sort of extra peripheral or you have to program a controller or something along those lines to try to give yourself some functionality from the couch. And I felt like there had to be a better way. So today, I'm here to show you the better way. And you'll notice that on this desk between the two computers is a little Google Home Mini. And I'm going to show you how you can control most of the essential functions of Parsec with your voice when you use Google Home. And the first thing I'm going to show you and demo to you is how to use the Google Home to start your cloud computer. So in my past videos, I showed you guys how to set up a Paperspace cloud computer. And I've got that set up right now. Now, without any help, so if you don't do anything extra, to get that cloud server going, you have to either open up the Paperspace website or open up the Paperspace desktop app, and you have to navigate through quite a few menus to actually turn the server on. And that's pretty hard to do if you're not at the gaming computer itself. So they don't have a mobile app, their website is not mobile friendly, so it's kind of a difficult thing to do. And up until today, I've been doing that with a remote desktop app, but now we have the option of doing that with the Google Home Mini, and I'm going to show you how that is done, and then there's more to it, so I'm going to show you some more things later. But just to get started, let's go. Hey Google, turn on my cloud computer.
Okay, turning on your Paperspace computer.
And that is basically it. So if we kind of move up here, you'll see that that computer is now starting up. And if I can get my camera to focus, that would be easier to see. All right, so that's basically all there is to it. So all that you just saw on that screen was completely automated. So I purposely set back far away from the computer so that you can see I'm not using my hands, I'm not touching the keyboard or the mouse, I'm not using a controller. Everything that just happened on the computer right there was done automatically and was initiated from the Google Home. And to do that, we're using a couple tools. So one tool is a program on the computer that's called Event Ghost. So Event Ghost allows you to program what are called macros. So they're actions that are taken as one step, so several actions that are taken together. So in this case, the actions are opening the Paperspace app, moving the mouse to the correct locations, and clicking the buttons when necessary. And also just kind of spacing out some pauses so that your app has time to load each screen properly before it clicks the next thing. And so that's one part of it. The second part of it is using a system called IFTTT. And IFTTT allows you to program the Google Home with your voice to do quite a few things. I mean, it can be used to do a lot more than what we just described, but in this case, it's sending a signal from the internet to the computer, and it's taking, basically triggering that macro that I created with Event Ghost because Google initiated it. And so that's just an example, and I wanted to do it from up here because I wanted you guys to see what happens on the computer when I start that process, when I do that. And I'm going to show you how it works kind of in a practical sense downstairs and how I use it every day to get things done, because I have another Google Home in the living room downstairs. So I'm going to go ahead and make a transition down to the living room, and then I'm going to show you a few more things on that TV down there, so you'll see exactly how I game and how that Google Home system helps me.
All right, and welcome to my living room. So in the living room, you'll see that over here next to the lamp, I've got another Google Home Mini set up. And then just like we talked about over here, I've got the Surface Pro 2. It is docked into this TV, and on the screen of the TV, you are looking at the Surface Pro 2. And I'm going to show you how you can use this to control Parsec. If you're sitting on a couch, you don't have to pull out anything else. Now you will notice I do have a controller over here. I am not using that controller. Everything that I'm about to do is just through voice. So with that said, I'm going to show you how you can get Parsec going and basically get to the point where you can just use your controller naturally from that point on. Hey Google, stream my gaming PC.
Okay, streaming your gaming PC through Parsec.
All right, and that should look familiar. So that's the same computer that's upstairs. All right. Hey Google, open Big Box.
Okay, starting Big Box.
And there we go. So this is the interface that I use to control my gaming. So this is a completely controller-friendly interface. I can launch whatever system I want and whatever game I want from the controller from this point on. And if you're interested in that interface, I've mentioned it quite a bit in my other videos, and I've talked a little bit more about it. And so if you're interested in what that is and how you use it, take a look at some of those other how-to videos, and I go into a lot more detail with those. All right. Hey Google, stop streaming.
Okay, shutting down your streaming session.
All right, so that takes us back into the actual Surface Pro. Hey Google, close Parsec.
Okay, closing Parsec.
And we're just back at the desktop. So you saw I just navigated through the whole thing with just my voice. I could do the exact same thing if I wanted to boot up that cloud computer and stream that instead. Same types of commands. And it lets me do it all with my voice. Now in the past, I would have had to pull out my phone and open up a remote desktop app to have that same sort of functionality. And every one of those commands would have been a long series of clicks and pinching and zooming, and it's doable, but it's kind of a mess. So with Google Home, I don't have to worry about that anymore. I can just sit back, give a couple quick commands, and I'm ready to game. And I don't think anybody else is doing anything like this. I think this is kind of a first. Now I will say, for those of you that maybe aren't into the Google ecosystem, you can do this with an Echo. So if you have a device with Alexa built in, IFTTT does support Alexa in a very similar way, and you could use her instead. So I just wanted to point that out in case you're not a Google person. And honestly, the Google Home's kind of new for me. I grabbed them during the holidays, got them for a really good deal. And I've really been enjoying them. So this is my newest thing that I've done with them, but they can do a lot more on top of that. I'm pretty impressed with it. So that's basically it in a nutshell for down here. And you saw how quick and how easy it was to get into Parsec, how to load up a server, a session for gaming, and then how to get to the point where you could just continue and pick games with your controller. So it's all completely doable. You don't need any sort of mouse and keyboard. You don't need to do any kind of wonky programming of your controller to make it look like a mouse or a keyboard. Really simple to do. Now I'm going to head back upstairs, and I'm going to show you guys how you set that up with a little more detail. So I'm going to go through the programs that are used and give you guys a quick little how-to, so that if you want to try this on your own, you should have a basic idea of how you would do it.
All right, so we are back upstairs, and I'm going to show you how I did all that. So I'm going to show you how to set up voice commands and how to get things working. All right, so the first thing that you'll see in front of me is what you guys need to do first for yourselves. So go ahead and open up your browser, and you're going to visit eventghost.net. And once you do, you'll see this same page, and you're going to go right down here and click on the download page. and then go up here to the latest release. So that's what this one is for now, and then click on it and download it. Now when you do download it, it's just a quick installer. Run the installer. It's very straightforward. There's nothing special that you have to select, so just kind of click through it and finish it up so that it's installed. And then when you're done, go ahead and open Event Ghost, and when you do, you will see this screen. Now at first glance, this screen might seem a little bit overwhelming, but I'm going to break it down so that it's really easy and accessible for you, and so that you can use this as a tool to set up your own voice commands through the Google Home. So starting off, if you look over here on the left, this is basically just a system log. So you get an entry for everything that happens within Event Ghost, and it's cool to see, but it's not really relevant to what we're doing, so it's not something that you have to worry about or memorize or pay attention to. Now the meat of Event Ghost is going to be this portion here on the right, and these are the commands that we use, and like we talked about earlier, the macros that we use to make the commands that we issue through Google Home actually happen on the computer. And so we'll go through that in detail. Now something that I've done for you to make that really, really easy is I've created a profile for you already, and if you look at the description below the video, there's a link for that profile. So go ahead and download it and then open it up in Event Ghost. The profile is called Start Server, and when you do open it up, so you just go here to File, go to Open, and then pick that profile. But once you do open it up, you're going to see this exact same list right here on the right, and we'll go through that list and I'll break it down so that the steps in the list make sense, and then we'll talk a little bit more when we're done. Now this very first bit is really important. So if we go here, we're going to click on Plugin, and we're going to right click it and go to Configure Item. And the only thing on this page that is important is this section right here, which is the TCP port number. This port number is how the Google Home reaches across the internet, finds the computer, and then issues the command to Event Ghost. So this is kind of like the doorway into the computer. And it's really important to have this port open on the router, on your router. So we're talking about making a change to the router potentially. Now if you're already familiar with port forwarding, you're welcome to use the same port that I have listed here. So when you open up this screen, it should be the same number that I'm showing you on the screen. But it can really be any available TCP ports in your router. So it can be something else that's already open or something that you're comfortable opening. Now if you're not familiar with ports at all and you don't know anything about port forwarding, you can go ahead and go to portforward.com, and they should have detailed instructions for your router model, and you should be able to use that to pick a port and open it up and get that going. And a little tip is that if you get your router through your internet company, you could just go ahead and call them and say, hey, I need to open TCP port 14200, and they should be able to just do that for you on the phone and save you those steps. So let them do the hard work for you. But bottom line is, once you've opened up the port that you're going to use, go ahead and just hit OK here. Now the next step is actually the macros. So each one of these is a command that I can issue with my voice, and so we'll go through those and I'll break down how those work. So the very first one is the command that I used earlier in the video to start my Parsec or my Paperspace Cloud server. And you're welcome to use this exact same command. So if you already have a Paperspace Cloud computer set up, you could use this to control it with your voice. If you're interested in setting one up, take a look at my other videos. I have a video that goes in depth on how to set up a Paperspace server, and so everything you would need to get that all going is in that video. So feel free to take a look. Now one little prerequisite before you can actually use this macro is that you do need to have the Paperspace app installed on your PC, and because this whole macro is based on sending commands to that app. So make sure you go to paperspace.com and download the app and then install it. And once you've done that, you can take these steps to set up your voice command. So the very first thing that we're going to focus on, and we'll come back to this a little bit later, but the first thing is this Windows command. What this command basically does is, if you've got Paperspace open on the computer already, it's going to close it down for you, because every time that we run this command, we want to do that with a fresh set of windows. That way the buttons are always in the same order and the screens are always in the same order, and that's really important in order for this to work. So this command just closes any open instance of Paperspace if there is one. The second command right here tells it to open up a fresh copy of Paperspace. Now there's a chance that you may need to edit this if you install Paperspace in a non-default location. And if you did, you would just right click on this, go to Configure Item, and you would just use this button right here to browse for your paperspace.exe file on your computer, go ahead and select it, and then just hit OK. Now, after this, I have a pause programmed into the macro. The pause allows the Paperspace window to completely open up so that it's on your screen. This next command basically makes that window active, so it makes it the active window on the screen. And this last command here basically tells that Paperspace to always be on top, meaning that no other apps can open up on top of it and block our buttons or anything like that, so it's really important to keep it in the front the whole time. Now the next command is something that you guys may need to modify yourself. So if we open up Paperspace, this is basically what you'll see. So imagine that the first part of the macro just ran, and now we've got this window. One thing is that you will want to go ahead and put in your username and your password, and then check this box to have it remembered, so that every time Paperspace opens, these are both here already. And so our window opened, and our next step is to move the mouse so that it's right here on top of the sign in button. And that's what this command right here does. So if we right click on it and go to configure item, it lets you choose the position of your button on the screen. And this is something that you might want to play around with a little bit. So the X is your horizontal position, the Y is your vertical position, so where they cross is where your mouse will end up going. And this is just something that's really easy to do. It's just a little bit of trial and error. You can put really any numbers to start off in these boxes, and once you have put some numbers in the box, go ahead and just click test. So if I do that, you see that my mouse moves right over here. And if my Paperspace app was taking up the whole screen of the computer like it normally does, this location right here is where my button would be for me. And you want to program these numbers so that they move, so if you go back to Paperspace, they move your mouse so that it's right there on top of the button for your computer. And what I was saying was that this may not happen by default because these numbers match my particular screen, and they may not be the same numbers for your screen. So go ahead and edit these numbers, and as soon as they do move the mouse on top of that button, go ahead and hit OK. And then I programmed another pause into the situation. What I have found just as I was testing was that if you move the mouse and then try to click right away, it may not work very well. And so what you want to do is have the mouse move to your location, pause for a couple seconds, and then you should be able to continue from that point on. So that's what this pause does, is it lets it settle on top of the button. And then the next step is to actually click the button. And you do that in 2 steps. So the first step is to toggle the mouse button. So we're toggling the button down, so it's like pushing down on the mouse. And then the second step is toggling the mouse button again, which is basically setting the button to release. So it's pushing down, releasing the button, which is essentially just what a click is. So what that looks like is over here, you would move your mouse, settle on the sign in button for 2 seconds, and then click it. And that's basically all that there is to that first portion. Now if we go back here, the second portion is a longer wait. And the reason that we have a longer wait here is that signing into your account is something that can take a variable amount of time, meaning that based on the condition of the computer and the internet and the actual server at that moment, it can take different amounts of time each time the button is clicked because it has to load in. And what I found is that sometimes it opens really quickly, like we just saw in my example today. It took about 2 seconds. And sometimes it takes up to about 5 if it's loading for a couple extra seconds there. I've never seen it take more than 6, so for me 6 seconds is pretty safe. Now you're welcome to edit this, so you can right click it and go to configure item and change that to something else. If you need it to wait longer, or if you feel like it's never going to take 6 seconds, you can make that whatever amount you want. And once we do that, the next step is to move the mouse pointer again. And what we're doing is we're moving the mouse pointer right over here on top of this gear. And so just like before, you're going to want to right click on this, go to configure item, and change these 2 numbers until they basically line up on your screen so that your mouse moves right on top of this gear, just like that. And just like before, you can put in arbitrary numbers, hit test, see where the mouse jumps, and kind of move those in increments until they jump on that button for you on your screen. And once they do, go ahead and hit OK. And then same as before, anytime that we move on top of a button, we want to move there and then let it sit for a few seconds and pause. So we have a 2-second pause. And then just like before, we're going to do a left mouse down and a left mouse up to actually click the button. And so what that looks like is we're moving our mouse over here, pausing for 2 seconds, and then clicking down. And we're on to our last page. So just like before, we always have a little bit of a pause after moving. And our last move is going to be going into this and moving our mouse right here on top of the start button. So that's the last move here. And then just like before, you're going to right click it, configure it, and adjust these values so that your mouse basically does the same thing, so that it moves right here on top of start. And once you've got that lined up for your system, go ahead and hit OK again. Now with this one, what I found was that I actually did not need a pause here. So I've jumped right into toggling the mouse. So push the mouse button down, release the mouse button, and over here that would basically click this start button, and that's what starts your server. And the last step over here is I have a 25-second wait. So that just makes sure that we have plenty of time to start it and that it actually is booting up. And then for me, I've got a command in here, right here, to close Paperspace again. So I don't like to just leave it up on the computer if I'm not sitting at the computer. So after 25 seconds, that Paperspace window closes. Now the command that you issued, it goes up there right away. So if you told it to turn on the server like we just did, then that server's turning on even if you close the Paperspace window. And that's basically this in a nutshell. So that's what each one of those functions does for you. And we'll move on to the next part in just a second. Alright, so transitioning back over here to the browser, the next step is to actually program IFTTT. So we talked about that a little bit earlier, so that it actually will send the command from the Google Home to our server that we just kind of configured. So the Event Ghost server to run one of these macros. Now I didn't go into a lot of detail on these last two macros. I think you saw me use both of those earlier. So one of them was opening big box, one of them was stopping the stream. And these are both extremely simple, so nowhere near what I just showed you up here, using the same principles. Now one thing I do want to point out really quick is, and I told you I'd come back to this, there's one last command here, and you see one of these commands for each one of these macros. This is really important. So if we right click on this and go to configure, it's basically the name for that macro. So this is the name that links this to IFTTT, and I'll show you in a minute how that actually is used and how it links. But you can name these whatever you want, but that's what this item in each of these is basically based on. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to walk you through a theoretical setup. So let's say that instead of opening Big Box, which is what I do, let's say that instead you want to open Steam Big Picture. So what you would do is you create a macro, and you would choose to start a program. So just like we've talked about up here, you would go in here and browse for your Big Picture exe file and select it here, and then just name it. Let's say Start Big Picture. We'll call it that. And the next step is you would go back to IFTTT, and if you've never used it, go ahead and up here you'll have a button to sign up. So create an account and then log into it. And once you're logged in, we're going to go right up here to My Applets. And you see I've already got some, but we're going to create a new one so you can see it step by step. So go right over here and click New Applet. And then we're going to program this. So we're going to go to If This, and we're going to type in Google. And if you're using a Google Home or a Google Assistant like I've been doing for this video, you're going to click on Google Assistant. Now if you're using an Echo or something with Alexa built in, you're going to type in Alexa, and you'll see that you have a similar thing for her. For the purposes of the video, I'm going to go back to Google because that's what we've been demoing and focusing on for the video. So click on Google Assistant, and we're going to choose Say a Simple Phrase, and then it's going to let us program it. So remember, we're trying to open up Big Picture, so we're going to think of ways to command that to the Google Home. So we're going to say Open Big Picture. Now it lets you give two alternate phrases to do the same thing. So another way would be Start Big Picture. And then the last way could be Launch Big Picture. So those are the three commands that we can say that would basically initiate this action through the Event Ghost. And then you can also program not Alexa. See, I'm mixing my words up now. You can also program the Google Home to respond to you. And so we'll say, okay, starting Big Picture. And so that's what she'll say back to me whenever I say one of those three phrases. And it could be whatever you want. That's just an example. But we'll go down and we'll create the trigger. So this is what we say to take the next action. And then the action itself is going to be Web. And then we're going to click on Web Hooks. And then we're going to choose Make a Web Request. And this next part is important, so I'm going to pause and we're going to really focus on it because it's important to get this right. So the URL is what the IFTTT will send this request through to reach your Event Ghost server that's on your computer. So it's important to make this precise. Now what we're going to do is we're going to type in http:// and then for you on your system, you're going to basically just open up your browser and do a web search, and you're going to type in what's my IP. So you could go to Google and type in what's my IP. And in the results, it's going to give you back a number. So the number is basically 3 digits, dot 3 digits, dot 3 digits. So I'm not going to put mine in here because I don't want to broadcast that through a video, but so we're going to use X's to represent it. So just like we said, 3 digits, dot 3 digits, dot 3 digits. So take the results that you just got when you searched for your IP in Google and put them in the place of these X's. And then we're going to put another colon, and we're going to go back to Event Ghost. So remember, one of our first steps was we right-clicked on the web server and we configured it, and we chose a port number. So if you use my port number, so 14200, you can use that, or if you customized it, you're going to want to make note of what you used. And we're going to go back over to IFTTT, and we're going to put in that port number. So 14200 for me, and then you're going to type in a slash and a question mark. So you're going to do that. That's just part of the command. And then we're going to go ahead and we're going to put in our name that we created. So remember, we configured the item. It's an event name. So whatever you chose here is what you're going to put at the end of that URL. So in our example of what we're pretending to create, we chose start big picture. And that's basically it. That's the whole URL, and that's how you come up with it. And then the rest of it's really easy. Method can stay on get. Content type can be text plain. You don't need anything at all for the body, and we're just going to hit create action. And then up here we can do just a little bit of less customization. Just I choose to uncheck receiving notifications. I don't want a notification on my phone every time I speak to the Google Home. And then up here, this is kind of awkward, so we're going to make that make more sense. So open big picture, and then when you're done, you would just hit finish. And that's basically it. That command is now active, so if you've got a Google Home or Google Assistant set up in your environment, you could go ahead and just give it that command and say, hey Google, open big picture, and it would basically trigger through this, and then it would go through your list down here and then open this. Now, one little last tip that I find helpful, in your Event Ghost, go to File, go to Options, make sure that you've checked the box to auto start this with your computer. And then I also choose to check the box to minimize to your tray when you hit the X up here to close it. It's important to have Event Ghost running on the computer, otherwise there's nothing to receive the command from the Google Home. So those two things ensure that it starts up with the computer and is running, and you don't accidentally close it when you hit your X up here. And that's really all there is to that basic setup. So you've created your command with your macro. You can have multiple commands like you see on my screen. If you wanted to add your own command to the list, you would just right-click the configuration tree and then choose Add Macro, and it would add another one down here that you could program. And you can really have as many commands built into this as you want. And when Event Ghost opens, it should open up the last file that was open, which is going to be that start server file that I linked to you down in the description below. And that's basically it. So it's not super complicated. It's really, really easy. And these things are very powerful. It lets you really do a lot with your voice, which frees up your hands, means you don't need all those extra accessories, and is really cool, and also looks cool to anybody that's watching you do it. Now, the last bit that I want to show you is something that is completely optional, but I highly recommend it, and I find it to be very helpful. So open up your browser again and go to pulseway.com. So pulseway.com. Pulseway is a software that you can install on your cloud computer that will monitor the cloud computer and can send notifications to your phone whenever certain things happen. So all that you're going to do is go to this website, create an account, so sign up. It lets you have 2 computers on your account for free, and that's basically all that there is to that. And once you've created your account, go back to pulseway.com, click on Downloads, and then Agent for Windows, and click on Pulseway for Windows 64-bit. Now remember, you're doing this on the cloud computer, so log into your cloud computer to do these steps and download this to the cloud computer. Go ahead and run the setup wizard. There's not much to it. And once you've opened it up and logged into it with that account that you just signed up for, you'll notice that on the window that opens, there's a notifications tab at the very top of the window. And if you click it, and I'm not going to show you this in detail because this is just a little extra on the end, but once you click it, it gives you a list of checkboxes for types of notifications that you can have sent. And for me, I've turned on 2 of those. One is I get a notification when the computer starts up, so when the cloud computer turns on. And then two is I receive another notification when the cloud computer turns off. And you can go on your phone, it can be Android or iOS, just go into either the Play Store or the App Store and download the free Pulseway app on your phone, sign into it with the same account that you created right up here, and you will receive notifications when anything that you checked on the cloud server happens. And this is where that's helpful. So let's say that I'm downstairs in the living room and I told Google to turn on my cloud computer, so I'm waiting for that to boot up. Well, I don't know if it actually booted up. I don't know if something glitched or something didn't happen. Now, I will throw this out there. I've not experienced something not working, but it's a system, so you just never really know, right? So you're sitting there waiting. It can take a few minutes for that cloud computer to boot up, and it's great to have some feedback that lets you know that it actually happened the way that it was supposed to. So as soon as you get that notification on your phone, you know that the server's up and ready to go, and you can just jump right into it and start gaming. Now, if you don't get a notification after about 5 minutes, then it's fair to suspect that something didn't work and that you may need to go check on it. But like I said, I've never had that happen, but it's really nice to have that confirmation that it really did start up, and it lets you know also that you're ready to game and just log into your system. Now, the shutdown command is even more important because with a cloud computer, you're getting billed by the hour, and you only want to be billed for the time that you're actually gaming. So if you've told Google to shut down your cloud computer, you absolutely want to know that it happened the way that you told it to. And same thing, so if you get that confirmation that the computer shut down, you can have peace of mind knowing that your billing has stopped and that you're not going to continue getting billed for time that you're not gaming. And the contrast is true. If you don't get a command within a few seconds, then it's fair to assume that maybe that didn't work and that you might need to check on it. So I find that Pulseway is a great tool. It's completely free. On top of that, it also lets you monitor your server so you can check the hardware, see how much of the hardware is being used, and quite a few other things. So it's very cool for a free app. And that's really it for that last tip. And I hope that this was helpful. As always, I go to as many extreme lengths as I can to make these videos accessible and helpful to you guys. So I appreciate it when you guys like the videos. I love comments, and like I said, this is a really exciting thing for me. Being able to do all these things with my voice through Google Home has really changed how I game and how I stream. And if you're interested, feel free to look into these things. Now, if you don't have a Google Home, you can go on your smartphone. If you have iOS, you can download the Google Assistant, and you can issue the same voice commands to the Google Assistant, and it will work. If you have Android, Google Assistant is probably already baked into your system, and you could just say, hey Google to your phone and issue the same commands through the phone itself. It's easy to use. Now, something that's cool, with the apps. So I had an instance the other day. So I'll give you an example of where the app can be helpful even if you have Google Home. So the other day I was gaming, and then my wife came home unexpectedly and said, hey, we need to rush out. So I stopped, I turned off the TV and rushed out the door with her. And I got a couple miles down the road and I realized, hey, I probably didn't shut down my cloud computer. I rushed out the door and just forgot. Well, I opened up my phone, pulled up the Google Assistant app, and just basically issued that command. Even though I was in the car, I said, hey, Google, shut down my cloud server, and it did it. So it issued the command back to my cloud server. So it even works if you're not on the local network, and that can be a game changer or a lifesaver in my case. So like I said, I hope that everything's awesome, and I hope that you guys enjoy that and are excited about that in the same way that I am. And like I said, like the video, subscribe to me, because I do push out videos pretty often, and there are things like this. And find me on Twitter, and until next time, you guys have a good time, and I hope that you have great success with your streaming.